Welcome to the Select If class project. We will create a program that displays information about people and orders that have been placed in the past 30 days. The results should be displayed based on what the user enters at a prompt. The prompt will allow the results to display one of three ways. First is the person orders raw data. This will be the default option. If the user selects this report type, we will display person IDs, names, and their order information. A person's rows should be grouped together with their most recent order listed first in a spreadsheet-like grid. Next is the person orders audit. If this option is selected at the prompt, we will create a report that displays a person's name and their list of unique orders. We will also post the number of each order placed and the total number of orders for this person. We can use the Report Writer sections to create a formatted report with the requested aggregate information. The last option is the 30-day order audit. If this option is selected at the prompt, display a list of all orders placed in the past 30 days. Specifically show the catalog code, orderable name, and the total number of orders placed for that order within the date range in a spreadsheet-like grid. The requirement does not ask for anything related to the person, so the person table is not needed. Since the output should display in a spreadsheet-like grid, Report Writer is also not needed for this option. We need a new prompt program. We will call it One Advanced Select If. We will need to build a prompt to allow the user to flex between the three different report types. Clicking the Add button to add a new prompt. Changing the prompt display to enter report type. Changing the prompt name to report type. Changing the control type to list box. Choosing this option to allow the user to pick a value from a predefined list. We can use a number to designate whether we want report 1, 2, or 3. To pass the integer data type to the program, changing the prompt type to expression. We now need to build the options using the data source, clicking on the Data Source tab. For the list we are creating, we will use a string table, which is defaulted. Let's fill in the table below, adding a 1 in the first row in column A. Then the report type in column B, adding person orders raw data. Two in the next row. Then person orders audit for the report type. 3 in the next row. And 30-day order audit for the report type. We can adjust properties for this table by clicking the Properties button. We can see column A is defaulted as the key column. This works. We will leave this as the key column since this is where we put our numbers to differentiate the various report types. This value is what gets passed to the program and drives the output. We can check the hidden box for column A so the users do not see the integer values. The user will see and select the report type by description, not by the key or number associated with the report type. We have square brackets around the A indicating this column is the key column. We also have a different color of background for this column to indicate it is hidden from the user. One last setting to choose. The first report type should be the default. Let's change the first prompt option to be the default. Right-clicking on the row and selecting Set Default Row. An asterisk is added next to the row number indicating it is the default row. The prompt is complete. Clicking Save. Then Yes to save the program file. When using the Select If functionality, build the default query first. Once this query is created, you can flex the different parts of the select command using the Select If syntax. It's time to start building the Person Orders Raw Data report option. Let's use Query Builder to start this query. For this query, we need to display person IDs, names, and their order information. What tables are we going to need to get this information? Person and orders tables? Excellent. Let's add those tables. Moving to the Fields tab to select the fields. From the Person table, getting the person ID and name. From the Orders table, we need the order information. Let's grab the order ID, catalog code, and the original order date and time fields. Moving to the Qualification tab. Planning on the Person table. Joining to the Orders table. We need to link the Orders table to the Person table. What common field should we use for linking the tables? You got it! The Person ID field resides on both tables and can be used for the linking statement. We also need to qualify on orders placed in the past 30 days. We can use the original order date and time fields for the qualification. For this option, the data needs to be sorted so a person's rows are together. Within those rows, showing the row with the newest placed order listed first. We can do this work by adding the fields to the Order By clause by using the Sort tab. Dragging over the person ID and the original order date and time fields. Changing the sort order for the original order date and time to descending to show the newest order first. Adding a little bit of insurance in the Control Options tab. Max rec of 100. Time equal to 30. And since we want the output to be sent to the output device selected at the prompt, let's check the Into box and change it to $outdev. That is all we need from the Query Builder. Here is the query for option 1, which is the person orders raw data. Let's save and compile. Confirm there are no compile errors. No errors, that looks good. Now let's run the program. Notice the gray bar on the person orders raw data report. This indicates it is the default report. At this point, we have not added any logic to use other selected report types. So we can just click the Execute button to test option 1. Looks good. We can see multiple people and their list of orders in a spreadsheet-like grid. Focusing on just one person's rows, we can see the newest order for this person is listed at the top. This query and output looks to be successful. One report down, 2 to go. On to option 2. For this option, we need to create a person orders audit report that displays a person's name and their list of unique orders. We also need a total for each orderable and the total number of orders for the person. Sounds simple enough. To use the Select If functionality, follow the keyword select with an if statement. The default portion of the query follows the end if command. Everything below the end if is the default query. Now we need to evaluate the report type prompt value. If $report type equals 2, run the second report type. We need to evaluate what is already in the default query and what needs to be flexed. Most of the default query is structured just as we need. It returns the same data we had in the person orders raw data. Option 2 makes the data easier to read with some added aggregate information. Basically, we just need to add report writer sections. Let's start off building the report. As we build the report, we may find the need to flex other clauses of the select, and we'll build as we go. Let's start with the head report section. This is the first section to process and will only process one time per select. Let's add the report title of Person Orders Audit. To follow the recommendation of matching feet, adding a foot report section. At this point, we do not need to do any processing in this section, so we can place a null in there to satisfy syntax requirements. Next, we need to display the person's name. It would make sense to show their name just one time. What report writer section can we use? Rethinking of the head person ID section? Good thought. This section follows the head report section. We can also add in a foot person ID section. Let's add a row plus 2 in this section to advance a couple of rows. This section processes once at the end of the rows for a person. This is a good place to add information for a total number of orders for a person. Let's use the aggregate count. Following the aggregate that counts the orders, adding another row +2 to place a blank line between people. Next, we need a list of unique orders. We want to display each orderable name just one time. What report writer section could we use? Are you thinking of a head or a foot of something related to the orderable name, like the order mnemonic or the display value of the catalog code? Yes, that is correct. We already have the display value of the catalog code, so we can use that expression, right? To use a field or expression as a report writer sort item section, it must be in the order by clause. The P.Person ID is in the order by clause, so the head and foot P.Person ID sections are fine, but we are missing the display value of the catalog code in the order by clause. Adding the expression in the default order by clause could impact the output of the default query. Instead, we can flex the order by clause specifically for the option 2 report type. To flex the order by clause, we add the clause to the Select If section outside of the default query. When adding various clauses of the Select command to the Select If section, the clauses must follow the appropriate order. So the order by clause needs to be placed above report writer. Order by P.Person ID takes care of one of the fields used as a sort section. For the next one, we can use the expression name of O-catalog disp from the select list. Since O-catalog disp is now in the order by list, we can add a head section for that expression. Remember, the head sort item sections must follow the same order as the order by clause. Since person ID is first, the head P.Person ID section needs to be listed first. The head O catalog disp is listed next. In column 10, we can display the orderable. Next, we need a count of each orderable. The foot O catalog disp section processes once at the end of the rows for the specific orderable and can use this section for counting orderables. Then we can do a count of the catalog code. Okay, we have fulfilled the requirements for the person orders audit report. Let's save, compile, and then run. No compile errors. Select the second report type. The report looks good. We can see Test 2 has 2 CBC with diff orders and 1 CT thorax order for a total of 3 orders. Let's close this report and run this program again, but selecting the person orders raw data to confirm we can still run that report. Excellent. The default option still works. We now have two report outputs created and available to run. These first two report types are using the same data to drive the output. We have the person and order information in a raw format and that same information in a report style output with added aggregates to provide summary type information. The next report type is only using order information. We no longer need any person information. Using the Select If functionality, can we use a different From clause and a different qualification section from the default query? Sure. Let's see what that would look like. We will add an else if to handle when the report type is 3, placing the else if below the report type of 2 section. We can start with the From clause and just reference the table needed, which is the orders table. The default qualification no longer makes sense since we are only using the orders table. Let's add a date range qualification on the original order date and time field. Now let's build a select list. We need the catalog code, orderable name, and the total number of orders placed for that orderable. Now that we have an aggregate in the select list, we need to tell the RDBMS level how to group the data to appropriately apply that aggregate. We are only asking to display the O.catalog code and the aggregate, so we need to do a group by the catalog code. One last item before testing this option. The default order by clause includes the person ID from the person table. Since this query doesn't use the person table, this order by won't work for this query. No problem, we just create a unique order by clause for this query. Remember that the select clauses are used in a specific order, so the order by clause is placed after the group by clause. We can order by the O count expression in descending order so the highest order count is listed first. Let's save and compile. No compile errors. Select the 30-day order audit report and click Execute. Looks good. We can see 60 CBC with diffs were ordered in the last 30 days. Now let's confirm the other reports still run. Person orders raw data still looks good, showing the data in the spreadsheet-like grid. Person Orders Audit still looks good as well, showing the data in a report style format with the aggregate information. Excellent! We now have 3 different reports where we were able to flex different parts of the select command using the Select If functionality. Let's review the full select command created with the Select If syntax. This is the default select. If the logic falls into the Select If logic and a clause isn't flexed, whatever is defined in the default query is used instead. The default select is what drives the Person Orders Raw Data report type. Let's scroll up to see how we built the Person Orders Audit select. Let's see what the query would look like as a full select command, including the default clauses and the flexed clauses. From the default select, we are using the Into clause, select lists, the From clause, the qualification section, and the With clause. For this report type, we could use most of the default select clauses with some minor tweaks. We are flexing the Order By clause and added report writer sections. Now let's review what the 30-day order audit report kept from the default query and what is replaced or added. For the 30-day order audit, we deviated fairly significantly from the default query. The only clauses we used from the default query are the Into clause and the With clause. We flexed the Select list, the From clause, the qualification section, and the Order By clause. We also added in the Group By clause. We have only scratched the surface with this example of how the Select If functionality can be used. For example, you could flex the With clause multiple ways to suit the needs of the query. Imagine a query that uses the expand function, and the data returned could be vastly different from one execution to the next. Let's say you found an ideal range for this data where the expand equals 1 control option works best. But you have also identified a different range where the expand equals 2 control option works better. You could flex a With clause to pass down the desired expand control option. Another example. Maybe a user has requested the ability to choose between a formatted report and the grid style output. This could be done by flexing the Skip Report control option. Skip Report equals 1 skips the report writer sections for the grid style output, and Skip Report equals 0 honors the report writer sections and renders a formatted report. Flexing one clause is much better than maintaining 2 separate programs. You will find many other scenarios where the Select If functionality allows for variations in the output. This concludes the Select If demo. Thank you for hanging out with us as we walk through this example.